Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with some more ancient lore. We're taking one last trip into paradise. Today should be the wrap up. We are doing the final six cantos of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, Paradise. We have worked our way through hell, we have worked our way through purgatory, and now we are nearing the completion of the journey. We have found a few esoteric keys along the way, and we have found some places where it's probably some keys that we do not have yet. All of those things are in the playlist for this, and there are other playlists that will be linked as well that hold some of the things that may help you out along the way. If you get lost, if you get confused, if you just want to check it out from the beginning, everything is linked in the corner and provided in the box down below, along with the source material. We will be reading from Canto 28 until Canto 33 today. We will be finishing up. So let's dive in. Paradiso, Canto 28.
After the truth against the present life of miserable mortals was unfolded by her who doth in paradise my mind, as in a looking glass a taper's flame, he sees who from behind is lighted by it,
before he has it in his sight or thought, and turns him round to see if so the glass tells him the truth, and sees that it accords therewith as doth a music with its metre. In similar wise my memory recollecteth that I did, looking into those fair eyes of love, made the springes to ensnare me, of which love made the springes to ensnare me. And as I turned me round, and mine were touched by that which is apparent in that volume, whenever on its gyre we gaze intent, a point beheld I that was raying out, light so acute, the sight which it enkindles must close perforce before such great acuteness, and whatsoever star seems smallest here would seem to be a moon if placed beside it, as one star with another star is placed, perhaps at such a distance as appears a halo cincturing the light that paints it, when densest is the vapor that sustains it. Thus distant round the point a circle of fire so swiftly whirled that it would have surpassed whatever motion soonest girds the world. And this was by another, circumsect, that by a third, and the third then by a fourth, and by a fifth the fourth, and then by a sixth the fifth, and the seventh followed thereupon in width, so ample now that Juno's messenger entire would be too narrow to contain it. Even so the eighth and ninth, and every one more slowly moved according as it was in number distant farther from the first. And that one had its flame most crystalline, from which less distant was the stainless spark, I think because more with its truth imbued my lady, who in my anxiety beheld me much perplexed. That did not run together like that, my bad. Said, from that point dependent is the heaven and nature all. Behold that circle most conjoined to it, and know thou that its motion is so swift, through burning love whereby it is spurred on. And I to her, if the world were arranged in the order which I see in yonder wheels, what's set before me would have satisfied me. But in the world of sense we can perceive that evermore the circles are diviner, as they are from the centre more remote. Wherefore, if my desire is to be ended, and this miraculous and angelic temple, that has for confines only love and light, to hear behooves me still how the example and the exemplar go not in one fashion, since for myself in vain I contemplate it. If thine own fingers unto such a knot be insufficient, it is no great wonder, so hard hath it become for want of trying. My lady thus then said she, do thou take what I shall tell thee, if thou wouldst be sated, and exercise on that thy subtlety. The circles corporal are wide and narrow, according to the more and less of virtue which is distributed through all their parts. The greater goodness works the greater weal, and the greater weal the greater body holds, if perfect equally are in all its parts. Therefore, this one which sweeps along with it, the universe sublime, doth correspond unto the circle which most loves and knows. On which account, if Thou unto the virtue apply thy measure, not to the appearance of substances that unto thee seem round. Thou wilt behold a marvelous agreement of more to greater, and of less to smaller, in every heaven with its intelligence, even as remaineth splendid and serene the hemisphere of air, when Boreas is blowing from that cheek where he is mildest, because is purified and resolved the rack that erst disturbed it, till the welkin laughs, with all the beauties of its pageantry. Thus did I likewise after that my lady had me provided with her clear response, and like a star in heaven the truth was seen. As soon as to a stop her words had come, not otherwise does iron scintillate when molten than those circles scintillated. Their coruscation, all the sparks repeated, and they so many were. Their number makes more millions than the doubling of the chess. I heard them sing Hosanna, choir by choir, to the fixed point which holds them at the Ubi, and ever will where they have ever been. And she, who saw the dubious meditations within my mind, the primal circles, she said, have shown thee seraphim and cherubim. Thus rapidly they follow their own bonds to be like the point as most they can, and can as far as they are high in vision. Those other loves that round about them go, thrones of the countenance divine are called, because they terminate the primal triad. And thou shouldst know that they all have delight as much as their own vision penetrates the truth, in which all intellect finds rest. From this it may be seen how blessedness is founded in the faculty which sees, and not in that which loves and follows next. And of this seeing merit is the measure, which is brought forth by grace and by good will. Thus on from grade to grade doth it proceed. The second triad, which is germinating, in such wise in this sempiternal spring, that no nocturnal Aries despoils. Perpetually, Hosanna warbles forth with threefold melody that sounds in three orders of joy with which it is entwined. The three divine are in this hierarchy. First, the dominions, and the virtues next, and the third order is that of the powers. Then, in the dances twain penultimate, the principalities and archangels wheel. The last is wholly of angelic sports. These orders, upward, all of them are gazing, and downward so prevail, that unto God they all attracted are, and all attract. And Dionysus, with so great desire to contemplate these orders, said himself, he named them and distinguished them as I do. But Gregory afterwards dissented from him. Wherefore, as soon as he unclosed his eyes within this heaven, he at himself did smile. And if so much of a secret truth a mortal proffered on earth, I would not have thee marvel, for he who saw it here revealed it to him, with much more of the truth about these circles. And so ends Canto 28, and here we have a study of the skies, right? The different orders or the different circles of the rotation, the precession of the equinox. In my best estimation, again, I am not an astrologer. I have not spent extensive time studying the stars. I can identify a good bit of the constellations simply through repetition and interest, but I have not studied the influence of the stars upon people or anything of that nature. So I don't have, for direct reference, the 9 orders of the heavens, but I am sure that there are 9 circles that they divide things down into, and that is what he is talking about. Again, that is esoterica that I do not have the key for, so while I can identify that there is probably something there, I don't know it. I don't try to, but there is something about the precession and the stars, right? It may just be a rationalization of why the stars precess. That could be a thing. Next up, Paradiso, Canto 29. At what time both the children of Latona, surmounted by the ram and by the scales, together make a zone of the horizon, as long as from the time the zenith holds them in equipoise, till from that girdle both, changing their hemisphere, disturb the balance. So long, her face depicted with a smile, did Beatrice keep silence while she gazed fixedly at the point which had overcome me. Then she began, I say, and I ask not, what thou dost wish to hear, for I have seen it where centers every wind and every who be. Or shar, how about that? Not to acquire some good unto itself, which is impossible, but that his splendor and its resplendency may say subsisto, in his eternity out of time, outside of all other limits, as it pleased him, into new loves the eternal love unfolded. Nor as if torpid did he lie before, for neither after nor before proceeded the going forth of God upon these waters. Matter and form, unmingled and conjoined, came into being that had no defect, even as three arrows from a three-stringed bow. And as in glass, in amber, or in crystal, a sunbeam flashes so that from its coming to its full being is no interval, so from its Lord did the triform effect ray forth into its being altogether, without discrimination of beginning. Order was concreated and constructed in substances, and summit of the world were those wherein the pure act was produced. Pure potentiality held the lowest part. Midway bound potentiality with act, such bond that it never be unbound. Jerome has written unto you of angels, created in long lapse of centuries, or ever yet the other world was made, but written is this truth in many places, by writers of the Holy Ghost, and thou shalt see it if thou lookest well thereat. And even reason seeth it somewhat, for it would not concede that for so long could be the motors without their perfection. Now dost thou know both where and when these loves created were, and how, so that extinct in thy desire already are three fires. Nor could one reach, in counting, unto 20 so swiftly as a portion of these angels disturbed the subject of your elements. The rest remained, and they began this art which thou discernest with so great delight that never from their circling do they cease. The occasion of the fall was the accursed presumption of that one, whom thou hast seen by all the burden of the world constrained. Those whom thou here beholdest modest were, to recognize themselves as of that goodness which made them apt for so much understanding. On which account their vision was exalted by the enlightening grace and their own merit, so that they have a full and steadfast will. I would not have thee doubt, but certain be, 'tis meritorious to receive this grace according as the affection opens to it. Now, round about this consistory, much mayest thou contemplate, if these my words be gathered up without all further aid. But since upon the earth, throughout your schools, they teach that such is the angelic nature that it doth hear and recollect and will, more will I say, that thou mayst see unmixed the truth that is confounded there below, equivocating in such like prelictions. These substances, since in God's countenance they jocund were, turn not away their sight from that wherefore not anything is hidden. Hence, they have not their vision intercepted by object new, and hence they do not need to recollect through interrupted thought. So that below, not sleeping, people dream, believing they speak truth, and not believing, and in the last is greater sin and shame. Below, you do not journey by one path, philosophizing, so transporteth you love of appearance and the thought thereof, and even this above here is endured, with less disdain than when is set aside the holy writ, or when it is distorted. They think not there how much of blood it costs to sow it in the world, and how he pleases who in humility keeps close to it. Each striveth for appearance, and doth make his own inventions, and these treated are by preachers, and the evangel holds its peace. One saith that the moon did backward turn in the passion of Christ, and interpose herself, so that the sunlight reached not down below, and lies. For of its own accord the light hid itself, whence to Spaniards and to Indians, as to Jews, did such eclipse respond. Florence has not so many Lapie and Bendius fables as these, that every year are shouted from the pulpit back and forth, in such wise that the lambs, who do not know, come back from the pasture, fed upon the wind, and not to see the harm doth not excuse them. Christ did not to his first disciples say, Go forth into the world, preach idle tales, but unto them a true foundation gave. And this so loudly sounded from their lips that in warfare to enkindle faith they made of the evangels shields and lances. Now men go forth with jest and drolleries to preach. And if but well the people laughed, the hood puffs out and nothing more is asked. But in the cow there nestles such a bird that if the common people were to see it, they would perceive what pardons they confide in. For which so great on earth has grown the folly that without proof of any testimony, to each indulgence they would flock together. By this Saint Anthony his pig doth fatten, and many others who are worse than pigs, paying in money without mark of coinage. But since we have digressed abundantly, turn back thine eyes forthwith to the right path, so that the way be shortened with time. This nature doth so multiply itself in numbers that there never yet was speech, nor mortal fancy that can go so far. And if thou notice that which is revealed by Daniel, thou wilt see that in his thousands number determinate is kept concealed, the primal light that all irradiates it, by modes as many as receive therein, as are the splendors wherewith it is mated. Hence, inasmuch as on the act conceptive the affection followeth, of love the sweetness therein diversely fervid or is tepid. The height behold now, and the amplitude of the eternal power, since it hath made itself so many mirrors where 'tis broken, one in itself remaining as before. And so ends Canto 29, and here we get a little bit of the wrap-up of the Zodiac, a little bit of these people are in heaven, but they're not like fully in heaven. They're in the heaven that they create. We've already been through that. And a little bit of obey the doctrine or else you will be punished, right? That's how it ended up. Not a whole lot to extrapolate on there. I don't hold doctrinally with the Catholic Church or pretty much anything that has been doctrinal in this, although there has not been a whole lot of that. Next up, Paradiso Canto 30. Perchance 6,000 miles remote from us is glowing the 6th hour, and now this world inclines its shadow almost to a level, when the mid-heaven begins to make itself so deep to us that here and there a star ceases to shine so far down as this depth, and as advances bright exceedingly the handmaid of the sun, the heaven is closed, light after light, to the most beautiful. Not otherwise the triumph which forever plays round about the point that vanquished me, seeming enclosed by what itself encloses. Little by little from my vision faded, whereat to turn my eyes on Beatrice, my seeing nothing and my love constrained me. If what has hitherto been said of her were all concluded in a single praise, scant would it be to serve the present turn. Not only does the beauty I beheld transcend ourselves, but truly I believe its maker only may enjoy it all. Vanquished do I confess me by this passage more than by problem of his theme was ever overcome the comic or the tragic poet. For as the sun, the sight that trembles most, even so the memory of that sweet smile my mind depriveth of its very self. From the first day that I beheld her face in this life to the moment of this look, the sequence of my song has never been severed. But now, perforce, this sequence must desist from following her beauty with my verse as every artist at his uttermost. Such as I leave her to a greater fame than any of my trumpet, which is bringing its arduous matter to a final close. With voice and gesture of a perfect leader she recommenced. We, from the greatest body, have issued to the heaven that is pure light. light, intellectual, replete with love, love of true, good replete with ecstasy, ecstasy that transcendeth every sweetness. Here shalt thou see one host and the other of paradise, and one and the same aspects which at the final judgment thou shalt see. Even as sudden lightning that disperses the visual spirit so that it deprives the eye of impress from the strongest objects. Thus round about me flashed a living light, and left me swathed in around with such a veil of its effulgence that nothing I saw. Ever the love which quieteth this heaven welcomes into itself with such salute, to make the candle ready for its flame. No sooner had within me these brief words an entrance found than I perceived myself to be uplifted over my own power, and I with vision new rekindled me, such that no light whatever is so pure that but that mine eyes were fortified against it. And light I saw in fashion of a river, fulvit in its effulgence, twixt two banks, depicted with an admirable spring. Out of this river issued living sparks, and on all sides sank down into the flowers like unto rubies that are set in gold. And then, as if inebriate with the odors, they plunged again into the wondrous torrent. As one entered issued forth another. The high desire that now inflames and moves thee to have intelligence of what thou seest pleaseth me all the more, and more it swells. But of this water it behooves thee, drink, before so great a thirst in thee be slaked. Thus said to me the sunshine of mine eyes, and added, the river and the topazes going in and out, and the laughing of the herbage are of their truth foreshadowing prefaces. Not that these things are difficult in themselves, but the deficiency is on thy side, for yet thou hast not vision so exalted. There is no babe that leaps so suddenly with face toward the milk if he is awake much later than his usual custom is, as I did, that I might make better mirrors still of mine eyes, down swooping to the wave which flows that we therein be better made. And even as the penthouse of mine eyelids drank of it, it forthwith appeared to me, out of its length to be transformed to round. Then, as a folk who have been under mask, seem other than before, if they divest the semblance not their own they disappeared in. Thus, into greater pomp were changed for me the flowerlets and the sparks, so that I saw both of the courts of heaven made manifest. O splendor of God! By means of which I saw the lofty triumph of the realm veracious, give me the power to say how I saw. There is a light above which, visible, makes the Creator unto every creature, who only in beholding him has peace, and it expands itself in circular form, to such extent that its circumference would be too large a girdle for the sun. The semblance of it is all made of rays, reflected from the top of primal motion, which takes therefrom vitality and power. And as a hill in water at its base mirrors itself, as if to see its beauty, when affluent, most in verdure and in flowers, so, ranged aloft all about the light, mirrored I saw in more ranks than 1,000, all who above there have from us returned. And if the lowest row collect within it so great a light, how vast the amplitude is of this rose in its extremest leaves! My vision, in the vastness and the height, lost not itself, but comprehended all the quantity and quality of their gladness. There, near and far, nor add, nor take away. For there, where God immediately doth govern, the natural law in naught is relevant. Into the yellow of the rose eternal, that spreads and multiplies and breathes an odor of praise unto the ever-vernal sun. As one who silent is and fain would speak, my Beatrice drew on and said, Behold, of the white stoles how vast the convent is. Behold how vast the circuit of our city. Behold our seats so filled with overflowing that here henceforward are few people wanting. On that great throne whereon thine eyes are fixed, for the crown's sake already placed upon it, before thou suppest at this wedding feast, shall sit the soul that is to be Augustus on earth of noble Henry, who shall come to redress Italy ere she be ready. Blind covetousness that cast its spell upon you has made you like unto the little child who dies of hunger and drives off the nurse. And in the sacred forum then shall be a prefect such that openly or covert on the same road he will not walk with him. But long of God he will not be endured in holy office. He shall be thrust down where Simon Magus is for his deserts, and make him go of Alagna, lower go. And thus ends Canto 30. And here we get a little bit of doctrine, a little bit of church history. Not a whole lot for me to extrapolate on, right? Not a lot for me to talk about. The divine experience is close to that, right? There seems to be some of the outside of body scope of the universe discovery going on there, right? It's not clearly plain, but it does seem to be inferred that you can see the sun and the point at which the sun receives its power, which it then emanates out to us, which is a thing, by the way, and the motion of the planets and the things being held in place in the way that they're supposed to be, the extrapolation of the waters above. But other than that, there's not a whole lot there to dig into. So let's dive into Canto 31. In fashion that as of a snow white rose, displayed itself to me the saintly host, whom Christ in his own blood had made the bride. But the other host that flying sees and sings the glory of him who doth enamour it, and the goodness that created it so noble, even as a swarm of bees that sinks in flowers one moment and the next returns again, to where its labour is to sweetness turned, sank into the great flower that is adorned with leaves so many, and thence reascended to where its love abideth evermore. Their faces had they of all of living flame, and wings of gold, and all the rest so white, no snow unto that limit doth obtain. From bench to bench, into the flower descending, they carried something of the peace and ardour, which by the fanning of their flanks they won. Nor did the interposing twixt the flower and what was over it of such plentitude of flying shapes impede the sight and splendor. Because the light divine so penetrates the universe according to its merit, that naught can be an obstacle against it. This realm secure and full of gladsomeness, crowded with ancient people and with modern, unto one mark had all its look and love. O trinal light, that in a single star, sparkling upon their sight, so satisfies them look down upon our tempest here below. If the barbarians, coming from some region that every day by Hellas is covered, revolving with her son whom she delights in, beholding Rome and all her noble works, were wonder-struck, what time the Lateran above all mortal things was eminent, I, who to the divine had from the human, from time unto eternity had come from Florence to a people just and sane. With what amazement must I have been filled! Truly, between this and the joy, it was my pleasure not to hear and to be mute, and as a pilgrim who delighteth him in gazing round the temple of its vow, and hopes some day to retell how it was. So through the living light, my way pursuing, directed I mine eyes over all the ranks, now up, now down, and now all round about. Faces I saw of charity persuasive, embellished by his light in their own smile, and attitudes adorned with every grace. The general form of paradise already my glance had comprehended as a whole, and no part hitherto remaining fixed. And round I turned me with rekindled wish, my lady to interrogate of things concerning which my mind was in suspense. One thing I meant, another answered me. I thought I should see Beatrice, and saw an old man, habited like the glorious people. Overflowing was he in his eyes and cheeks with joy benign, in attitude of pity, as to a tender father is becoming. And she, where is she? Instantly I said, whence he? To put an end to thy desire, me Beatrice hath sent from mine own place. And if thou lookest up to the third round of the first rank, again shalt thou behold her. Upon the throne her merits have assigned her. Without reply I lifted up mine eyes and saw her, as she made herself a crown, reflecting from herself the eternal rays. Not from that region which the highest thunders is any mortal eye so far removed, and whatsoever sea it deepest sinks, as there from Beatrice my sight, but this was nothing unto me, because her image descended not to me by medium blurred. O Lady, thou in whom my hope is strong, and who for my salvation didst endure in hell to leave the imprint of thy feet, of whatsoever things I have beheld as coming from thy power and from thy goodness, I recognize the virtue and the grace. Thou from a slave hast brought me unto freedom, by all those ways, by all the expedients whereby thou hast the power of doing it. Preserve towards me thy magnificence, so that this soul of mine which thou hast healed, pleasing to thee, be loosed from thy body. Thus I implored, and she, so far away, smiled, as it seemed, and looked once more at me, then unto the eternal fountain turned, and said, the old man holy, that thou mayest accomplish perfectly thy journeying, whereunto prayer and holy love have sent me, fly with thine eyes all round about this garden, for seeing it will discipline thy sight, farther to mount along the ray divine. And she, the Queen of Heaven, for whom I burn wholly with love, will grant us every grace, because that I, her faithful Bernard, am. And as he, who, peradventure, from Croatia, cometh to gaze at our Veronica, who, through its ancient fame, is never sated, but says in thought, the while it is displayed, My Lord, Christ Jesus, God of very God, now was your semblance made like unto this. Even such was I while gazing at the living charity of the man who, in this world, by contemplation tasted of that peace. Thou Son of Grace, this jocund life, began he, will not be known to thee by keeping ever thine eyes below here on the lowest place, but mark the circles to the most remote, until thou shalt behold enthroned the Queen, to whom this realm is subjected and devoted. I lifted up mine eyes, and as at morn, the oriental part of the horizon surpasses that wherein the sun goes down. Thus, as if going with mine eyes from vale to mount, I saw a part in the remoteness surpass in splendor all the other front. And even as there, where we await the pole, that Phaeton drove badly, blazes more the light, and is on either side diminished. So, likewise, that Pacific orb of flame gleamed brightest in the center, and each side in equal measure did the flame abate. And at that center, with their wings expanded, more than 1,000 jubilant angels saw I, each differing in effulgence and in kind. I saw there at their sports and at their songs a beauty smiling, which the gladness was within the eyes of all the other saints. And if I had in speaking as much wealth as in imagining, I should not dare to attempt the smallest part of its delight. Bernard, as soon as he beheld mine eyes fixed and intent upon its fervid fervor, his own with such affection turned to her, that it made mine more ardent to behold. And thus ends Canto 31, and here, in order to keep him from lusting, his temptation is removed and set in her rightful place in the heavens. And it is important to note that the heavens are ruled by a feminine energy. That's interesting. There are several interesting pieces in this. Nothing as complete as what we've already talked about, though. It is important to note that there are people ancient in here, which means that there are people who were before Jesus in heaven. It's important to note that you create the heaven in which you reside, right? Heaven is portrayed here as being all the same and only differentiated by what you hold your responsibility to be. So that's an important thing to note here, too. You create the heaven for yourself. He is being told to take in the full compass of heaven, right? To look from the lowest parts to the highest parts and to discover the commonality between. And that is where I believe that was going. Next up, Canto 32. Absorbed in his delight, that contemplator assumed the willing office of a teacher and gave beginning to these holy words.
The wound that Mary closed up and anointed, she at her feet, who is so beautiful, she is the one who opened it and pierced it. Within that order which the third seats make, is seated Rachel, lower than the other, with Beatrice in manner as thou seest. Sarah, Rebecca, Judith, and her who was ancestress of the singer, who for the dole of the misdeed said, Miserere me. Canst thou behold from seat to seat, descending down in gradation, as with each one's name? I go through the rows, go down from leaf to leaf, and downward from the seventh row, even as above the same succeeded the Hebrew women, dividing all the tresses of the flower. Because, according to the view which faith in Christ has taken, these are the perition by which the sacred stairways are divided. Upon this side, where perfect is the flower, with each one of its petals, seated are those who believed in Christ who was to come. Upon the other side, where intersected with vacant spaces are the semicircles, are those who look to Christ already come. And as upon this side the glorious seat of the Lady of Heaven and the other seats below it such a great division make, so opposite doth that of the great John, who, ever holy, desert and martyrdom endured, and afterwards 2 years in hell. And under him thus to divide were chosen Francis and Benedict and Augustine, and down to us the rest from round to round. Behold now the high providence divine, for one and the other aspect of the faith in equal measure shall this garden fill. And know that downward from that rank which cleaves, midway the sequence of the two divisions, not by their proper merit are they seated, but by another's, under fixed conditions. For these are spirits one and all assoiled before they any true election had. Well canst thou recognize it in their faces, and also in their voices puerile, if thou regard them well and hearken to them. Now doubtest you, and doubting thou art silent, but I will loosen for thee the strong bond, in which thy subtle fancies hold thee fast. Within the amplitude of this domain, no casual point can possibly find place, no more than sadness can, or thirst or hunger. For by eternal law has been established whatever thou beholdest, so that closely the ring is fitted to the finger here. And therefore are these people festinate unto true life, not sine causa here, more and less excellent among themselves, the king, by means of whom this realm reposes, in so great love and in so great delight that no will ventureth to ask for more. In his own joyous aspect, every mind creating, and at his pleasure dowers with the grace diversely, and let here the effects suffice. And this is clearly and expressly noted for you in Holy Scripture, in those twins who in their mother had their anger roused. According to the color of the hair, therefore, with such a grace the light supreme consenteth that they worthily be crowned. Without, then, any merit of their deeds, stationed are they in different gradations, differing only in their first acuteness. 'Tis true that in the early centuries, with innocence, to work out their salvation, sufficient was the faith of parents only. After the earlier ages were completed, behooved it that the males by circumcision unto their innocent wings should virtue add. But after that, the time of grace had come, without the baptism absolute of Christ. Such innocence below there was retained.
Look now into the face that unto Christ hath most resemblance, for its brightness only is able to prepare thee to see Christ. On her I did behold so great a gladness, rained down, borne onward in the holy minds created through that altitude to fly, that whatsoever I had seen before did not suspend me in such admiration, nor show me such similitude of God. And the same love that descended there, Ave Maria, gratia plena, singing, in front of her as wings expanded wide, unto the canticle divine responded. From every part the court beatified, so that each sight became serener for it. O Holy Father, who for me endurest to be below here, leaving the sweet place in which thou sittest by eternal lot, who is the angel that with so much joy into the eyes is looking of our Queen, enamored so that he seems made of fire. Thus I again recourse had to the teaching of that one who delighted him in Mary, as doth the star of morning in the sun. And he to me such gallantry and grace as there can be in angel and in soul. All is in him, and thus we fain would have it, because he is the one who bore the palm down unto Mary, when the Son of God to take our burden on himself decreed. But now come onward with thine eyes, as I, speaking, shall go and note the great patricians of this most just and merciful of empires, those two that sit above there most in rapture, as being very near unto Augusta, as it were the two roots of this rose. He upon the left is near her placed, the Father is, by whose audacious taste the human species so much bitter tastes. Upon the right thou seest that ancient Father of Holy Church, in whose keeping Christ the keys committed of this lovely flower. And he, who all the evil days beheld before his death, of her the beauteous bride, who with the spear and with the nails was one, beside him sits, and by the other rest, that leader whom on manna lived, the people ingrate, fickle, and stiff-necked. Opposite Peter seest thou Anna seated, so well content to look upon her daughter, her eyes she moves not while she sings Hosanna. And opposite the eldest household father, Lucia, sits, she who the lady moved, when to rush downward thou didst bend thy brows. But since the moments of thy vision fly, hence we will make full stop, as a good tailor who makes the gown according to his cloth, and unto the first love will turn our eyes, that looking upon him thou penetrate as far as possible through his effulgence. Truly, lest peradventure thou recede, moving thy wings, believing to advance, by prayer behooves it that grace be obtained, grace from that one who has the power to aid thee, and thou shalt follow me with thy affection, that from my words thy heart turn not aside. And he began this holy orison. And so ends Canto 32, and we have again the reiteration that there are people in heaven who you do not think they are there. Right? If you are a Bible-believing Christian, right, one of those people who believe that the death of Jesus Christ was necessary for you to be forgiven for sin, then you have a problem with Moses being there. Now, I have a problem with Moses being there for an entirely different reason, which we went into in the Bible study, but it's because he was not necessarily a good person, right? And not repentant about it at all. And that was a problem, right? This perception of heaven encompasses people who are outside of the scope, who are outside of the forgiveness that came through Christ. Well, you were here before. This is accounting for some of the problems that people have. Now, I have a whole different reason why, right? I believe that God forgives you without the intermediary. So you never needed a goat, you never needed a chicken, and you never needed Jesus. Those are just truths. And so I hold slightly different beliefs about the things. I think that you do get to heaven, that there is, partially at least, some recompense from your mind as to what you receive when you get there. I do believe that true reunion with the source, with God, is kind of an insensate type of thing. Like you return to the whole. So you get all of the answers and all of the things instantaneously, and you understand things that you didn't while you were here. Okay, last one. We are up to Canto 33. Let's do it. Thou, Virgin Mother, daughter of thy Son, humble and high beyond all other creature, the limit fixed of the eternal counsel. Thou art the one who such nobility to human nature gave, that its creator did not disdain to make himself its creature. So she's God. I got you. Within that womb, rekindled was the love by heat, of which in the eternal peace, after such wise this flower has germinated. Here, unto us, thou art a noonday torch of charity, and below, there among the mortals, thou art the living fountainhead of hope. Lady, thou art so great and so prevailing that he who wishes grace nor runs to thee, has aspirations without wings, would fly. Not only thy benignity gives succor to him who asketh it, but oftentimes forerunneth of its own accord the asking. In thee compassion is, in thee is pity, in thee magnificence, in thee unites whatever of goodness is in any creature. Now doth this man, who from the lowest depth of the universe, as far as here is seen, one after one, the spiritual, lives, supplicate thee through grace for so much power that with his eyes he may uplift himself higher towards the uttermost salvation. And I, who never burned for my own seeing more than I do for his, all of my prayers I proffer to thee, and pray they come not short, that thou wouldst scatter from him every cloud of his morality, so that with thy prayers that the chief pleasure be to him displayed. Still further do I pray thee, Queen, who canst, whatever thou wilt, that sound thou mayest preserve, after so great a vision, his affections. Let thy protection conquer human movements. See Beatrice and all the blessed ones, my prayers to second, clasp their hands to thee. The eyes, beloved and revered of God, fastened upon the speaker, showed to us how grateful unto her our prayers devout. Then unto the eternal light they turned, on which it is not credible could be on which it is not credible could be by any creature bent an eye so clear. And I, who to the end of all desires was now approaching, even as I ought, the order of desire within me ended. Bernard was beckoning unto me and smiling that I should upward look, but I already was of my own accord such as he wished, because my sight, becoming purified, was entering more and more into the ray of the high light, which of itself is true. From that time forward what I saw was greater than our discourse, that to such vision yields, and yields the memory unto such excess, even as he who seeth in a dream, and after dreaming the imprinted passion remains, and to his mind the rest returns not. Even such am I, for almost utterly ceases my vision, and distilleth yet within my heart the sweetness born of it. Even thus the snow is in the sun unsealed, even thus upon the wind and the light leaves were the soothsayings of the Sibyl lost. O light supreme, that dost so far uplift thee from the conceits of mortals, that to my mind of what thou didst appear relent a little, and make my tongue of so great puissance, that but a single sparkle of thy glory it may bequeath unto the future people. For by returning to my memory somewhat, and by a little sounding in these verses, more of thy victories shall be conceived. I think the keenness of the living ray which I endured would have bewildered me, if but mine eyes had been averted from it. And I remember that I was more bold on this account to bear, so that I joined my aspect with the glory infinite, O grace abundant, by which I presume to fix my sight upon the light eternal, so that the seeing I consumed therein. I saw that in its depth, far down, is lying, bound up with love together in one volume, what through the universe in leaves is scattered. Substance and accident and their operations all interfuse together in such wise that what I speak of is one simple light. The universal fashion of this knot methinks I saw, since, more abundantly in saying this, I feel that I rejoice. One moment is more lethargy to me than 25 centuries to the emprise that startled Neptune with the shade of Argo. My mind in this wise wholly in suspense, steadfast, immovable, attentive gazed, and evermore with gazing grew enkindled. In presence of that light one such becomes that to withdraw therefrom for other prospect it is impossible he ever consent, because the good which object is of will is gathered all in this, and out of it, that is defective which is perfect there. Shorter henceforth will my language fall of what I yet remember that an infant, who still his tongue doth moisten at the breast, not because more than one unmingled semblance was in the living light on which I looked, for it is always what it was before, but through the sight that fortified itself in me by looking, one appearance only to me was ever changing as I changed. Within the deep and luminous subsistence of the high light appeared to me 3 circles of threefold color and of one dimension, and by the second seemed the first reflected, and by iris, as iris is by iris, and the third seemed fire that equally from both is breathed. Oh, how all speech is feeble and falls short of my conceit! And this, to what I saw in such, 'tis not enough to call it little. O light eternal, soul in thyself that dwellest, so knowest thyself, and known unto thyself, and knowing, lovest and smilest on thyself. That circulation, which, being thus conceived, appeared in thee as reflected light, when somewhat contemplated by mine eyes, within itself, of its own very color, seemed to me painted with our effigy, wherefore my sight was all absorbed therein. As the geometrician who endeavors to square the circle and discovers not, by taking thought, the principle he wants, even such was I at that new apparition. I wished to see how the image to the circle conformed itself, and how it there finds place. But my own wings were not enough for this. Had it not been then that my mind there smote a flash of lightning, wherein came its wish, here vigor failed the lofty fantasy, but now was turning my desire and will, even as a wheel that equally is moved, the love which moves the sun and other stars. And thus ends Canto 33 and Paradiso and the Divine Journey. And this was interesting because it is telling you that you are the all. Right? God is everything. God is me. God is you. God is the space between me and you, and He is the space between me and you. He is everything you can see and touch and everything that you cannot. He is every thought, every breath, and every movement that you ever make. God is. And you are part of God. You are not God. You are not in full control of this reality. You are a player. You have free will. You get to choose. You get to manifest. You get to create. You can call in because you are part of the one. You are not the one, however. The challenges aren't set by you. Your reaction is set by you. The bottlenecks, they're not up to you. They're up to Him. He chooses what trials we face. We get to choose how we react to those. Do you seek the one? Do you seek the many? That is the choice. Do you seek to be the individual, or do you seek the reconciliation? That is the choice. This last canto especially brings that home. You have the ability to form things, to create things. It comes most effectively after you have searched for God. Now, you are creating whether you believe it or not. The things that you speak, you create in your life. When you wake up and you say it's going to be a shitty day, It will. If you wake up and you say it's going to be a great day, it will. Shitty things might happen, but you can adjust to them because you have the mindset, the mental alchemy to rise above. We talked about mental alchemy a lot in the Chameleon. It's talked about in here too. This is the seeking of the heavens. You create the heaven by which you live. You create the hell in which you are punished. It is up to you to create. You are meant to choose love, to choose correct, to choose God, to be on the side of creation. But you have the ability to choose the other side. That is what the whole dance that is life is about. Is for you to willingly engage, to willingly embrace, to grab the reins of your own greater purpose, to seek the responsibility for your own life and those around you, to be the example which was displayed in here. Now, I do not agree doctrinally with everything Dante's thought. This was in 1300. That was a long time ago. Things have changed. We have come a long way. I don't believe now that the sacrifice was necessary for all of the things. So that puts a whole different spin on the entirety of it. But even accepting that, even taking that out, there is a lot of knowledge in this book. There's a lot of good in this book. Is it 100% correct? Probably not. Do I know? No. I believe I am correct. He believed he is correct. You believe you are correct. I am on the search for knowledge, for correctness. I am willing to be corrected. I am seeking to dispense the knowledge that I have. That's why we talk about the things that I have been given keys for. And I'm not here to shade things that I don't understand. So I don't talk about the things that I don't have the key for. I want to reveal just as much of God's love as I possibly can to you. And that is the goal. If you like what I'm doing here, let me know down below. Hit me with a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. As long as you keep it respectful, it gets to stay up. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with the super things. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat complicated topics. I know that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that I have a tendency to step on toes when I am displaying those beliefs. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. I stand where I stand for a reason. I have been quite firmly placed here, and I am more than willing to walk where he has placed me. I have my own path to peg. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. This has been Pit State. Peace.